Now it's my pleasure to have you here to present your interesting work. But I am not going to introduce you too much. He's a great researcher, he's a great multidisciplinary researcher. He got a lot of interesting research in AI machine learning for a very long time. So I think the rest I'm going to give send back to you, and then you can introduce the rest about your journey in the last 10 years. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Sue. And it's a pleasure to be here at La Trobe University, and it's a great campus. Yes, I am a very multidisciplinary researcher, and within science, I'm interested in mineral exploration, paleoclimate, landscape evolution models, and artificial intelligence in all these various domains. But I'm also interested quite a lot in philosophy of religion. So I thought the last 2 years that why not apply AI methods to understand religion and religious texts. So we have a group, we have a Vedanta reading group, where there's a couple of scientists. We meet every Thursday, we have like a Zoom session. And we have been studying Hindu and Buddhist texts, also including the Tao Te Ching and others. So we look at different translations and basically the different translations. And we were interested in how these different translations could, what is the difference between these translations? So I thought, okay, let's apply AI and NLP methods and try to understand them. So the key texts we'll look at is the Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads, and we'll apply sentiment analysis, discuss the results of applying sentiment analysis, topic modeling, and also some future plans we have, and future plans about ongoing work about evaluation of Google Translate and post-evaluation of the current language models. So, if you do not have much background in natural language processing, just want to say that it's a big area. And in the last 10 years, deep learning and machine learning methods, specifically deep learning methods, became very popular. And some of the big challenges of natural language processing, sentiment analysis, and topic modeling are two of the major challenges. And the other one is, of course, language translation. For example, English to French, English to Hindi, stuff like that. And Google Translate has been prominent in that. And the technology used to translate languages, deep learning has been a major part of that technology. So sentiment analysis, if you do not know about sentiment analysis, basically it's recognizing emotions in texts. And basically it's a key area in computational linguistics. And it's used for a lot in social media, and it's used a lot by advertising firms. They want to know how you react so that they can sell you the products. So sentiment analysis is important. And it's also slowly being used by chatbots, and the future of a good customer support system would be when a chatbot is aware of how you are expressing your emotions. So that I don't know if this is implemented yet, but it would be good to implement it, so that when you are getting frustrated, the person is told, hey, this guy is getting frustrated, just cool him down. So this is the importance of sentiment analysis. And the other things, it could always be part of your messenger and other things, apps, WhatsApp messaging could be part of your everyday social media debates, so that you are informed by social media or related apps that, hey, the opponent is getting upset, why don't you cool down? So we need sentiment analysis support actually in the future. But I guess that would be my future talk. Now talking here, it gives me some ideas to future research directions. And then topic modeling, we want to know what type of topics or themes are expressed. An example is like during COVID, we had for example, in India, there were three sharp peaks, 3 waves. And what sort of topics have been expressed in the 3 waves, right? Given that in the 3 waves, the situation was very different. Also in India, in Australia, in US, so in some of those, there were strict lockdowns. In some of them, there were elections running. Some there were political protests and stuff, right? So we would want to understand what topics were there, So that's an example. And that we have done projects around that. And there's an ongoing project in my group. We are analyzing tweets from tweets are from Twitter, yes. And there's a paper on sentiment analysis, and there's a upcoming paper in our group on topic modeling. And this presentation I gave at Melbourne University last week. And so these 2 problems have, and the technology was developed. We began the technology development for sentiment analysis, and then we thought, okay, let's extend include topic modeling there, and later we can use it in other applications. So the main part is that a document that typically one sends multiple topics in different proportions, hence it is a challenge for natural language processing algorithms, and given the ambiguity of expressions. And that's a challenge not just for topic modeling, but also for sentiment analysis. And that's also a challenge not just for NLP, but for us, to sometimes know, what is this guy really joking, or is he angry? So that thing is a dilemma that we face from time to time. And if we can really predict and know that, we can avoid a lot of conflict. So topic modeling and sentiment analysis are bigger problems for NLP and technology design in the future, and we will be doing more and more work on this area. And of course, topic modeling is used a lot in advertising as well. So as I said, in the last 10 years, deep learning technologies became very popular, and recurrent neural networks are prominent deep learning models. They have been used for language translation tasks a lot. And basically, they have this vanishing gradient problem, which is a problem of learning long-term dependencies. They have been very prominent in modeling temporal sequences, and they have the ability to model dynamical systems as well. And they have been used in NLP tasks, in language translation, and speech recognition tasks as well. So LSTM is a prominent implementation of a recurrent neural network. And the idea was, in the canonical implementation, there was this vanishing gradient problem for learning sequences with long-term dependencies that has been addressed by the idea of memory cells and gates in recurrent neural networks. And they have addressed the vanishing gradient problem, and hence this opened a new opportunities for natural language processing, because you do not have to have time lags limited to 10 or 15 timestamps, but you could have a large timestamp of 1,000 or 2,000, size of 1,000 or 2,000 timestamps. Yeah, so you can, with the recurrent LSTM recurrent neural networks, the memory mechanism helps in that. So this is an example of how recurrent neural networks can be used for prediction of more for when you are typing. Basically, there's like a system that is trying to say what is the next word or keyword, so that there's auto completion in typing systems. That is also a prominent implementation of recurrent neural networks. So going into transformers is another implementation of LSTM, which is a more recent implementation a couple of years back. I think maybe it's based on this paper called "Attention is All You Need," which is one of the highly cited papers. So what is a transformer? It is basically after LSTM, there are other variants of LSTMs developed as well, bidirectional LSTM and encoder decoder LSTM, and transformer is basically using encoder decoder LSTM. So basically building, this is like a, in other terms, it's like building a Lego system, you keep on extending the robot further. So transformers are having the mechanism of attention. So we had memory in LSTM, and transformers have attention, and things are better. And in comparison to conventional LSTMs, transformers do not require data to be processed in a sequential order, since the attention operation provides context for any position in the input sequence. So here you can see, a special bit of a framework of a transformer, a specialized LSTM with where the multi-head attention mechanism is shown there. And this is just a figure from the literature. And you can see that it's quite a complicated architecture. You have input embeddings, output embeddings, the multi-head attentions are all there. And then there's a feed-forward operation. And finally, there's the predictions. So moving on, what is BERT? Bidirectional encoder representation from transformer. It's basically a transformer model which has been trained by, so it's a pre-trained model, basically from the English Wikipedia has been used to train it. 2,500 million words from the Wikipedia corpus is there, and then 800 million words respectively. And basically it has this different features. We have BERT base and then BERT large, and depends on the size of the feature. There's the size of the model is of course smaller and larger, and it depends on your application. You can download the BERT base or BERT large. We have been using mostly the BERT base because our application is not that large. And basically, we need to also note that with deep learning, we are looking at here is looking at language text. In text data, you cannot directly put into deep learning models. So you need a way to represent text data as numerical data, right? So you need to have some type of embedding, some type of feature extraction from text data. So word-to-vec and globe or global vector embeddings are some of these models have been developed, which is neural network-based models, so that you give them text and they have some kind of a latent representation. So numerical representation, which is then an input to the deep learning model. So you need to essentially, there's text data there, we need to extract features. But the extraction of features from text data, things such as word-to-vec and globe, they are context-free models, and they generate a single embedding for each word. When BERT can also do it, but BERT takes into account the context of each occurrence of a given word, which makes BERT one of the best language models. But BERT was developed a couple of years back by Google, and there's a paper on arXiv about it. But after BERT, there are a series of other pre-trained models. One is called robust BERT model, or prominently known as ROBETA. So like with BERT, the any and the BERT is usually used by people to show it in the website as a BERT. But I don't know what's the ROBETA cartoon symbol, but ROBETA is quite popular as a robust BERT. So, okay, so let's move into, that's all the background on the natural language processing part. In terms of the analysis of Hindu texts, what we see here is an important point in history in the Indian civilization. According to many scholars, this event happened around 5,000 years ago, or 5,100 years ago. And this is the Mahabharata war. And there's a text in India known as the Mahabharata, which basically means the Great India. And it has 220,000 stanzas of verses, So basically, even till now, the Mahabharata is, according to scholars, it's written somewhat 3,500 to 4,000 years ago in Sanskrit, in Vedic Sanskrit, but of the event that happened 1,000 years prior to being written down. And basically, a chapter in the Mahabharata is the Bhagavad Gita. So what is the Mahabharata is because it's about a war, and we have Lord Krishna there, who is known as the avatar of super consciousness or God. And then we have Arjuna, who is a protagonist of the Mahabharata, who is supposed to fight the war. And this is the event, the whole text is about a description of the war. It's a whole story of family story of generations. And then there's a family conflict where they want to fight due to rights to the land and, kingdom. And basically, there's like the family is divided. So one side is the Pandava and the other side is the Kaurava. But because these two groups, they grew together with each other, like on the opposing side, there's close family members of Arjuna. So when Arjuna is going to this war, on the opposing side are his gurus, also professors, and his cousins. And then he needs to decide whether he's going to fight this war and kill them, right? Or go and become a yogi. So the Mahabharata text itself, it would be a couple of thousands of pages if you print it out. But the Bhagavad Gita, if you print it out, it's merely 50 pages long. So it's not a big text. So if we did NLP on the Mahabharata, we'll be in deep trouble. But we are quite fortunate that the Bhagavad Gita itself is it's small text, but it's very condensed, and it is one of the most highest translated texts in history, apart from the Bible. And basically, the Bhagavad Gita is known to be the Bible of the Hindus. You could see it as the Bible of the Hindus. It's a very respected text, and basically, it is not a book of rules. It doesn't have any history. Whereas you have when you compare it with the Bible, you have these stories, these tales, and there's conversations or teaching by Jesus, Sermon of the Mount. Whereas the Bhagavad Gita is just questions and answers. So basically, Arjuna is in deep, he's troubled, he's really depressed. And Krishna is his mentor, his friend, his guru. And he just talks to him as a friend, should I go to war or should I not? Right? So there's a series of emotions expressed throughout the text. So basically, we have the reading group where we have been studying the text, and we have been studying a couple of translations, and we will read the different translations and try to compare them. And then, because it's a group of scientists trying to study philosophy of religion, eventually somebody said, hey, Rohit, why don't you do something? Or something in me said that, I don't know. Let's just use NLP to do this, So let's compare how good are the translations. So basically, this is the climax of the Mahabharata, of the Bhagavad Gita, when basically, in the beginning, basically, when Arjuna is talking to Lord Krishna, and Krishna is basically the key Hindu god, the key avatar of Lord Vishnu. In simple terms, you can see Krishna as Jesus of Hinduism, So he does not know that Krishna is a divine being. Krishna presents to himself as just his friend and mentor. But towards the end, when the debate keeps on happening, it's then the term karma or pronounced in the West as kama, supposed to be karma, and avatar, which they say avatar, avatar. These terms are from the Mahabharata, but avatar is there from earlier texts as well. But the term karma and the philosophy of karma is what Lord Krishna defined to Arjuna, basically. And karma, basically in English, it means action. Okay, simply action, but there are different types of actions. And all those definitions were given to Arjuna. And then finally, he decided that, okay, I'm going to now fight because this is my duty. And this is, if I don't do it, nobody else will. And he had to fight for his rights and right of his family to rule India, or majority of India at that time. And also his opposing side, his cousin brother, Duryodhan, he also humiliated Arjuna's wife, Draupadi. And so that fight was also for fight for women's rights as well. So finally, he decided with the discussion that I need to now go to work. And then it is that time that this is towards the end that Lord Krishna shows him his Virat Roop, or state of super consciousness, or his godly divine state, by giving him special set of vision. So that is all the background of the text. And so, as we know that, as I said, that our work is motivated from our reading group, and it's also motivated from the recent progress in natural language processing. And it's also motivated the fact that I'm teaching a Master of Data Science course, and towards the end, I'm teaching deep learning methods, and there NLP was an example. So that also motivated me to take this further. And the three texts that we are taking into consideration is the Gita according to Gandhi. And this is when Mahatma Gandhi was imprisoned by the British Empire. He was in prison, and in the prison, he translated the Bhagavad Gita from Sanskrit to Gujarati, right? And he wrote a series of notes about it. And then later that was translated to English. So that's why the translation to English is by Mahadev Desai, right? And that's when he did it. And then we have Eknath Ishwaran. He's a professor of Hindu studies and professor of Hinduism, Hindu philosophy, who was in India and he moved to US, and then he has an ashram in California, and he translated it then, and it's a prominent translation. Then you have Shri Purohit Swami, who did it much earlier. So there's a diverse age, and there's many other translations here, like more than 100, couple of hundred translations. And one other popular translation is by the ISKCON group, Society for Krishna Consciousness, and that's done by Swami Prabhupada, and that can be added for comparison in the future. So now you would be curious, like what type of things are written here, So chapter 3, verse 37, it is desire, it is aversion, born of passion. Desire consumes and corrupts everything. It is man's greatest enemy. As fire is shrouded in smoke, a mirror by dust, and a child by womb, so is the universe enveloped in desire. It walks through the senses, the mind, and the reason, and with their help destroys wisdom and confounds the soul. Therefore, O Arjuna, first control thy senses and then slay desire, for it is full of sin and is the destroyer of knowledge and of wisdom. So you can see how the dense philosophy is embroidered in here, because this is Krishna telling Arjuna that it is your desire, and with desire you get attached. So how should a man live and how should a man do his duties and when you should be attached and detached and so on. So the same verse by Mahatma Gandhi, it is lust, it is wrath, born of the guna, rajas. Guna means feature, rajas is one of those close to passion. It is arch devourer, the arch sinner. Know this to be man's enemy here, as fire is obscured by smoke, a mirror by dirt, and the embryo by the embryon. So is knowledge obscured by this. Knowledge is obscured. O Konteya, and that's the name of Arjuna, by this eternal enemy of wise men in the form of lust, its insatiable fire. So that's written by Mahatma Gandhi. And throughout the different translations, the name of Lord Krishna is different and Arjuna is different because they have multiple names throughout the Mahabharata and the whole Hindu tradition. And also because, these texts have been translated in so many Indian languages, and they have seen things differently. So for example, the spelling as well, in some spelling of Krishna, the H is not there. Similarly, the spelling of Shiva in the North Indian, it's Shiva, whereas in South India, it's Siva. So there's a lot of things to note in this. So you can see that the general ideas are the same, but the language is completely different. There is if you do a plagiarism detector, there will be like 0 in here, So another one, it is not possible to attain self-realization if a man does not know how to control himself. But for him who, striving by proper means, learns such control, it is possible. That's Shri Purohit Swami. Without self-restraint, yoga a hold is difficult to attain. But for self-governed, soul can attain it by proper means if he strives for it. That's by Mahatma Gandhi. So what we want to know is how close are these translations in terms of the sentiment analysis. That means verse by verse, what sentiments are expressed. And then we also do a semantic analysis to see how close those verses are, right? So what we have here is a multi-level sentiment classification problem. And that is the reason we have multi-level. That basically means that one verse can have 2 or 3 levels at once. So sometimes you can be optimistic and empathetic at the same time, right? And now you would be questioning, where did we get this labeling from? So this is from this Twitter COVID-19 dataset, which was hand labeled by 50 human experts for 100,000 tweets all around the world. So we used that data set to train our bird-based model. We trained the pre-trained bird-based model, you see. So that was done, and the best similarity that was done by the topic to word model. So the thing is, in this type of work, in NLP, a lot of time is usually spent in text pre-processing. It's messy, something that people don't want to do, but we have done it for you. All this text that we are talking about, everything is shared on GitHub. The models are all shared in GitHub. So basically, how did we get these texts out? Basically, look at all PDFs, read the PDFs into text, and then try to change things or pre-process things that cannot be read correctly. So for example, the other thing is that because the different translations, we kind of knew that when they were referring to Lord Krishna, here the author is saying Janardhana. That's also one of his names. So we did a manual check of that, of the different names they are referred to. So we did transform their names, so that was just one of the basic things to do. So the top 10 optimistic and pessimistic bigrams and diagrams from verses from Eknath Ishwaran. As you can see, supreme goal, every creature, selfless service, and the optimistic, and then the pessimistic, the ones are every creature, crime, death, So just note that here one side would optimistic would be more Lord Krishna. This side is Arjuna, no? Because he was quite sad, he was depressed, and this situation, the reason the Bhagavad Gita, one of the reasons it became such an important text in Hindu history and also in world history, is because this type of conflicting situations arise in everyday lives. You know, we don't have to fight a war with our cousins or brothers, but we do have conflicts, you know. And at times we have to kind of decide how to handle this conflicting situation. So this is one of the reasons the Bhagavad Gita became a prominent book. So now we are looking at a text-wise sentiment analysis. So here, till here, we are doing no deep learning. We're just having bigrams and trigrams. And then we run the deep learning model for the whole text, for the three different texts by Eknath Eshwaran, Mahatma Gandhi, and Purohit Swami. And we try to see how many optimistic, so we have a large group of optimistic, annoyed, surprised, and joking. That's the part which we are not taking that seriously, but we know that there's a bit of a humor and sarcasm kind of expressed by Lord Krishna, and that is seen as joking. But this is not like the where you crack a joke and somebody laughs kind of a joking. Okay, the reason why we have that is because in the COVID-19 data set, they were text level as joking. So this is what it detected. But the thing to note here is that there's not a very large difference across the translations for most of the sentiments except for annoyed and surprise. So because it's a multi-level classification, what basically this means is that you can express two or more sentiments at once, but most of the time it will be one, and the second most time it is two. So we thought that, okay, let's see what are the combinations of the sentiments expressed across the different translations. So what we can see here is, for example, optimistic. In optimistic, of course, this would be the most anyways, but we have optimistic and surprise with Mahatma Gandhi translation. Optimistic and surprise, and then optimistic and annoyed, two of the major ones there. And in the Eknath Eshwaran, we have optimistic, joking, optimistic, surprised, and so annoyed. And basically both of them, I mean, the numbers are a bit slightly different, but you can see that the sentiments are very close, you know. So the bottom line would be that these translations express very similar sentiments. And then moving on, I mean, we have the chapter by chapter sentiments. And here too, we notice that their sentiments expressed are quite similar, except for some of them, and across the different chapters. And there's 18 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm just showing it for the first 6 chapters. The rest are in the paper. So some examples. So the joking part was the part that I wanted to cover. So joking and optimistic by Eknath Eshwaran, but those who overcome the impulses of lust and anger which arise in body are made whole and live in joy. So that's seen as a bit of humor and optimistic. So filled with amazement, his hair standing in ecstasy, he bowed before the Lord and joined palms and spoke these words. So that's joking, but okay, could be seen as that. All are rushing into your awful jaws. I see some of them crushed by your teeth. I mean, this could be seen as a bit humorous, I guess. And then we have others as well, and so on. And we try to show these examples of joking with others. So we have joking and surprise here in Mahatma Gandhi. Then Arjuna, wonder struck and thrilled in every fiber of his being, bowed low his head before the Lord, addressing him thus with folded hands. This would be, in my view, this would not be anything humorous or joking. So this is where probably the AI has gone wrong, because this is the part when I said that Krishna showed him the Virat Rupa, and then Arjuna saw God or experienced higher state of consciousness. And then afterwards he said, please just let me be, as I was, and do not show your presence in this form, And then afterwards he became very emotional. He trembled with fear. And then that's when he thrilled every fiber of being. Then he bowed low his head before the Lord. And then he said, thank you, I'm good with my eyes as I have them, So I do not need to see your divine form because I'm trembling with fear, So this is not a joking comment, but this is an interesting one because we have the sentiment polarity score which we calculated. And the polarity, the negative sentiments and the positive sentiments. And in IMDb, there's an IMDb sentiment analysis data set, which has a polarity score, right? So that is a very prominent data set. And people use that for sentiment analysis. There's the use of Sandwave data set is just 2 or 1 year old. So it's a very recent data set. And I think that data set has really opened the route for NLP because we can know more about things through it. So what we see here is that in the beginning, we look at Arjuna's sentiments. He was really, depressed, very negative. But as the chapters, the first 2 chapters, Arjuna is complaining, and he is like, I don't want to be in this world. I don't want to go to this world. I don't want to kill my close family and friends, and so on. And he's crying, and he's like, I just want to probably leave all this and go into the forest and meditate and be a yogi. And Krishna starts with a bit negative, and then he goes positive, and throughout, because he's trying to console Arjuna, and throughout, then he's staying. Arjuna's sentiments basically become very positive. So this kind of aligns well with comparisons, and generally we find that the translations with bigrams and trigrams, and I've shown you the verses, they look very different, but with the vocabulary very different, but in the sentiment and semantic analysis we see a lot of similarity of the translations. Okay, so that's the major conclusions of this, and I need to rush a bit because there's some more to cover. And these things I have discussed now. So moving on to topic modeling, we have so similar to the Bhagavad Gita, actually the Bhagavad Gita is known as the 13th Upanishad. There's a series of texts. The earliest text in the Hindu corpus is the Vedas, and after the Vedas, the concluding chapters of the Vedas are the Upanishads. And Upanishads are also known as the foundation of Eastern philosophy and also world philosophy, because those texts were written before the Greek philosophers' philosophy. And the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita is seen as a summary of the Upanishad. The Upanishads were basically the teachings from gurus. Like the kings used to go to the forest and they used to say, hey, Guru, Sadhu, Swami, tell us the meaning about life. And they used to ask questions and they used to say things. And these kings basically wrote those down or the spiritual seekers wrote those things down, and they became books. And there were 108 books. There are 108 Upanishads. So these are short books. Some are like 2 pages, and some would be 10, some would be 20 pages long. And a lot of them were lost in history. Then the Bhagavad Gita, because there's like 108 Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, in printing them and studying them takes a long time. The Bhagavad Gita is seen as a summary of the Upanishads. So topic modeling is like, now we want to see, because the scholars know that the Bhagavad Gita is seen as a summary of the Upanishads and summary of the whole Hindu corpus. We thought, okay, let's see how much of the topics, the resemblance are there across these 2 different texts. And these texts, the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, they have both been translated in a number of different languages. So some of the quotes on the Upanishads by others who like the Upanishads. So Niels Bohr, who is one of the founders of nuclear physics, atomic physics. I go to the Upanishads to ask questions. It has very philosophical questions. There is no framework within which we can find consciousness in plural. This is simply something we construct because of the temporal polarity of individuals, but it is a false construction. The only solution to this conflict, insofar is any available to us, it lies in the ancient wisdom of the Upanishads. And Erwin Schrödinger's cat, you may remember, right? If you did a bit of physics. And Carl Gustav Jung as well, he really liked it. I'm running out of time. So others, what are some of the verses of the Upanishads? Some of the very common ones. What is the cause of the cosmos? It is Brahman. From where do we come from? By what do we live? Where shall we find peace at last? What powers govern the duality of pleasure and pain by which we are driven? So that's in Sevatasvara Upanishad. You are your deep driving desire is. As your deep desire is, so is your will. As your will is, so is your deed. As your deed is, so is your destiny. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Basically, it's a very famous mantra passage, which is remembered and is for motivation. Karma is a twofold, higher and lower. The study of the Vedas, linguistic rituals, astronomy, the arts are called the lower law knowledge. So according to the Upanishad, most of the things we study in our universities are lower knowledge. The higher is that which leads to self-realization. So it doesn't matter according to the Upanishad, you become a billionaire, you become academic. Are you self-realized? Are you enlightening the world? That's what the Upanishads are interested in. So the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishad, we have this comparison. Again, the same story, PDF files, text pre-processing, and then document embedding models, find topic, and then we do a topic comparison. The topic extraction pipeline, topic to bird part comes here, where we use all these methods, the clustering methods, because topic, note, the previous one, sentiment analysis, that was supervised learning, whereas topic modeling, that's unsupervised learning, essentially, right? Unsupervised learning, basic idea is you have all these texts, you need some kind of embedding vectors to be extracted from the text, and then you give the embedded vectors to clustering algorithms, and they will cluster the topics. And then from there, you find what topics are there. So, yeah, I mean, it's quite simple to say it, but if you see the GitHub repository, there's a lot of things happening in the background. So we have chosen the Bhagavad Gita by Eknath Easwaran, the previous author we discussed. And Eknath Easwaran, also did translate the Upanishad. So we thought that we should have the same author. And then there's another Shri Purohit Swami who also did the Bhagavad Gita. He also translated the 10 principal Upanishads, and he did it with William Butler Yeats, who is one of the prominent Irish poets. Must have heard about it if you were in any English literature class. And then we have the 108 Upanishads, and this is like from a website which is pretty new, and because a lot of them were lost, so people have try to collect whatever they can. And this is the corpus, the number of documents, the number of words. As you can see, the 108 Upanishads is quite large, 405,000 words, and average words per number of words and verses there. So the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, they have similar size, so it depends. So original documents and transformed documents, note that sometimes in the PDF you have some places which are underlined and things like that, and when you do text processing of them, then you have some special characters represented in funny ways, then you need to pre-process them. So the chapters, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the different number, the size of the chapters in number of words, whereas you can see this is the Upanishads, and the 12 Upanishads, some of those Upanishads, as I said, is like can be printed in few pages, right? And some are quite long, so some are quite long. Then we do the usual bigrams and trigrams of the Bhagavad Gita, which Arjuna, Krishna, self-realization, and of the Upanishads. Then we need to find a way to measure topic coherence. That means how well the topics are expressed. And we have all these different combinations. So the LDA is the conventional method that's used for topic modeling, and BERT-based topic modeling with latest clustering methods. They are prominent in the last 2-3 years. So we use the latest technology, and we compare all of them, and basically we find the Upanishads, how many topics are there, the topic coherence scores, basically, the topic coherence scores of these other combinations in the framework, they are much higher, more than 2 times higher than LDA, which is the conventional approach. So not only we are applying topic modeling to a new area of interest, which is the analysis of religious texts, but we are also looking at the latest technology of topic modeling, and this paper is also showing a good benchmark of the latest technology. So we also show, because there's clustering, we can then see how the topics overlap with each other. The Bhagavad Gita versus the Upanishad. You can see both with UMAP and PCA embeddings, there's a lot of overlapping of the topics, and not PCA's 4.4% explained variance ratio from dimension 1 and 3.7. So because PCA can give us the explained variance ratio, it's a very small percentage, and there's like 500 dimensions of the original data. That's the embedding, and then from there we're just taking the first 2 principal components, and we are showing this. So what are the major topics across them? The Upanishads and the Gita. So Krishna, these are all the names of Lord Krishna, which is a topic of its own. And this is mostly the Gita, meditation, spirituality. Whereas in the Upanishads, Krishna is not mentioned at all because it's a text pre-Krishna, right? And basically, Lord Krishna in the Mahabharata, he has also cited the Upanishads and the Vedas in his teachings. So these are all the topics, and then we have the similarity score, basically, of the different topics measured. And so topic 4 of the Bhagavad Gita and topic 5 of the Upanishads have a similarity score of 90%, So this is like some of those topics have a very large similarity score, and that's what we covered. And then we have this heat map, where we trying to see the topic score, because we have the topic vectors of the Upanishads here, and on the y-axis you have of the Bhagavad Gita. Then we can see topic 1 versus topic 14, high similarity, topic 1 versus topic 7, high similarity, and topic 1 versus topic 9. So you can go back to the tables and have a discussion about it, and that's what I've done in the paper. So yes, so this is mostly that the major conclusions are that there's high similarity scores of certain combinations of topics. 70% of the topics. We find that out of the 14 topics extracted from the Bhagavad Gita, 9 of them have a cosine similarity of more than 70% with the topics of the Upanishads, for example. And yes, and bed-based models show a very high topic coherence. So we saw that in the table. And we can also see the combination visualization of the low embedding space, the overlap of the topics. So this is most of the things that we have done. And this is like what we are doing now is a post-evaluation. Basically, we need to take the sentiments expressed in the sentiment analysis, give to human experts, and then so it's basically man versus machine qualitative study. And then I'm undergoing ethics approval at the moment. And then I'll be going to India in December and visit the Midam Charitable Trust, who have a group of students who study the Bhagavad Gita, and we'll give them a survey and we'll say, hey, what type of sentiments are expressed there? Then we'll write a paper by comparing that with what the AI model has done. And the other one ongoing project is the evaluation of Google Translate for Sanskrit. So the previous framework that we have done compared the different topics, different translations, the sentiments and semantic, we'll just add the translation from Google Translate in that framework, and we'll evaluate how good is the Google Translate for translating the Bhagavad Gita to English. So Google Translate, April, this was released where the Sanskrit translator came there. And this whole framework can be used to translate any, evaluate Google Translate for your mother tongues or any languages, So if you want to do that, please contact me. We can always do a project on Vietnamese, on Sinhalese, on Tamil, Mandarin Chinese, Cantonese Chinese, and so on. Okay, all of these are in Google Translate. So what are the major challenges and limitations? Because the Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, they are all written as verse, poems, and these are songs that are sung for thousands of years. And of course, we know that poems and songs, to translate them is always challenging, and we lose the meaning. And Hindi, Sanskrit is also not a spoken language. A small portion of language people know it. Mostly academics study it and speak it. So that's another limitation. The topic coherence score also has limitations when it comes to this, because we do not have qualitative assessment of how good it is. And then I have challenges in collaboration with humanities. There's a lack of funding opportunities in humanities sectors. The government has said no to many of the humanities groups. They cannot get funding. So, I mean, maybe when they collaborate with me, we can get funding because we have science plus humanities combined. But it's a challenge. And then recognition of interdisciplinary humanities research by scientific journals. So I've submitted this. Where do you publish these kind of papers, right? So the previous one, sentiment analysis, is IEEE access, and the topic modeling published by PLOS One. Finally, recognition and all right, and then okay, I can be always misrepresented as priest or a theologian, and yeah, that's another thing. And the thing is, like, these things will happen in the future when our group and team grows larger. And some other current and future works. So we are applying the same framework to studying the Bible, the Sermon of the Mount, and seeing 4 or 5 translations. We will go to further other texts in the future, Buddhist texts as well. We are interested in metaphor detection, and we're looking at Bhagavad Gita and Sermon of the Mount. These projects will end by the end of the year. And then we're trying to look at a pre-trained BERT model, try to develop a pre-trained Hindu BERT, because the terms are there, philosophical terms are there. In BERT, basically there's medical BERT, there's legal BERT, and all these different BERT models already. So we thought, let's do this. And also evaluate our translations by Sanskrit experts. There's planned topic modeling in evolution of ancient poetry and songs, humor detection in ancient religious texts, political biasness in media reporting. This is more of another area. And so this is the group, and mostly we are this research is like not funded by, the whole theme is not funded by any IRC or external grants. We are all working together as people with hobby in NLP, and this is not really part of my usual 35 hours of academic life. This is my weekend stuff. So these guys, Mukul, Venkatesh, Mahek, they are from interns from IITs, and Vansh and Abhishek as well. And Tom is a good friend of mine, and we established our Vedanta reading group. So we have been reading the Bhagavad Gita and other texts, and he comes from Abrahamic religious viewpoint he gives. And Shusharat is a Midam Charitable Trust, and Ashu Solo is an independent researcher from Canada. So I'll be going and visiting Shusharat in December. So this is the references and the Upanishads, and it's just submitted the final version, so it will appear, but they are part of my Google Scholar archive. And then this related work on COVID and election modeling. Everything is, all the papers and everything is in GitHub. And so this is all I would say. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Yeah, so this is one of the area sentiment analysis stuff we did, and you see this paper, there's all these maps about the US, about the different states and which state had provided drug review.
Something that you are adding to the speech is going to be so between the papers.
Yeah. So it's all there, and all this other stuff we'll try to put by end of the year, some of these. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Hello, Rohitas. My name is Petrus. I'm so interested when I listen to your presentation, especially the current and ongoing project that you're doing, sentiment analysis and semantic analysis on the Sermon of the Mount. So my question is, do you use only Greek language for that, or also look at the Hebrew language?
Yeah, we have so the expert there is Tom, and we had 3 random translations, but then we didn't find that much of difference in the sentiments. So he is now picking up both Hebrew and Greek, and we are looking at 5 translations. Yeah. But I do forget which ones, but they are quite diverse. Yeah, and this should be done by the end of the year. If you email me, I will give you the exact translations.
Okay. Excellent. Another question is, when you did the on the Bhagavad Gita, right, or what's the other Upanishad, right?
Upanishads, yeah.
Is that only the Sanskrit or the language that you use, the origin language, or you looking also? Because
no,
yeah,
we are not looking at Sanskrit. We are only looking at the translated documents. At the moment, that's a major limitation. So because there's not much language models on Sanskrit language. So it's all we are looking at analysis of translated text. But that's a future thing that we would want to go and develop Sanskrit model in the future, and also with help of Sanskrit experts look at things. Because when we are studying in our Vedanta reading group, when we have been studying this, sometimes we have been looking at the Sanskrit verses and trying to brainstorm if it makes sense that translated. Sometimes the term, as we see, like we would be like reading the different translations and see that there's like quite different words used, which changes the whole meaning of the verse. For example, in here by Mahatma Gandhi, he's saying lust, and Shri Purohit Swami is saying desire.
Desire, yeah.
The Sanskrit word is calm, K-I-A-M, calm. So how do you, and in whatever context it's expressed, then that should be the word that it's translated to. So yeah, we have a lot of limitations in this, what I have done.
Yeah.
But this is just the beginning, and with hopefully with interest of Indian universities as well. So I'm going to go and try. Goal is to present this at the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies next year, and also visiting India at the end of the year to get more recognition for this. But this whole the Bhagavad Gita research, it was featured in the Conversation. So there's an article in the Conversation, and that article basically then was reprinted in UK and in India by NDTV, and so there's a lot of views. So for the month of May, I think in the UNSW Conversation articles, that was the second highest seen. The first highest was how to avoid a nuclear bomb or something. So, so that was the second highest. So it's getting attention slowly.
Yep. Thanks for that, Reuters, and thanks for bringing up the idea of self-realization. Are you highlighting though? That's the key word I think that I found today. It's really important.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
And if anybody needs any of the PDFs of the or this text, I can email it to you. Just send me an email.
It's really interesting because there's something that we wanted to do on the Bible, especially like end-to-end kind of really look at the topics and philosophies right across end-to-end. And one of the ideas that we're looking at is how we can do it in the original Greek and Hebrew.
Yeah, the Bible one, we are only looking at Sermon of the Mount. It's a shorter piece. It's easier, but because we tried to do the pre-processing of the Bible, and it's like too huge, right? So I think it's not a good idea to look at the whole Bible. It's good to focus on specific aspects of it, perhaps.
Yeah, the idea was to kind of see like, so now currently you have concordance, the Bible, then you have concordance. It's like human generation of all these topics, and then they're cross-reference. So
Okay.
you do the study, you look at your concordance and say, you want a certain concept, then you need to show you all the verses, all the chapters.
All right.
So when you have that humanly made,
Okay, so
see
then
how-
that's great. We could use that as a form of supervised learning
Yeah,
to enhance the topic models. Yeah, somehow. Maybe we can combine that with the topic modeling much. Yeah.
This what questions regarding your methodologies when you what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're using triggers from COVID-19 to
Yes.
train what models, and then you use that to analyze your text, right?
Yeah.
Any kind of biases or problem you may aware of or you expect it to happen?
Yeah, what could have gone wrong is like if you see the language expressed in these verses, one of the major issue is the date. So one is 1938, for example, in 1985, and then Twitter stuff is from 2020. So the evolution of language has changed, but I think that I would argue that still people recognize sentiments the same way, at least to a larger percentage. Although you can read, you can see a black and white movie and you can see a latest colored movie, and there could be a large decades difference, but it will still appeal to you emotionally if they express the scenes that way. So based on that motivation, although the language changes, but the deep connection is there.
I'm not worried too much about the language change, but what is that? It looks like if I use the text from COVID-19, then I basically build an AI, which basically quite a depressing person. Read the text.
No. So if I showed you the results of my other work, the sentiment analysis from COVID-19, one of the interesting things in this paper, which is the +1 paper, you will see that in there, that joking and optimistic, they are the two highest sentiments expressed. Yeah. So as the peaks were rising in India, the first peak, which is the most depressing one, people were just joking. And it is kind of known when people are afraid that they would usually crack a joke. It's a part of a human psychology. So yeah, but what you're saying is right. That's not the right thing to do. And we are in the process of addressing it with the qualitative measure, the post study. So when we are going to give these surveys to people who will actually see the Bhagavad Gita and then label it, that will basically add to our training data set. Yes. Good one. Thanks.
We had different translations, and you showed extracts of paragraphs and texts, sentences by saying translate. So, and most of them sentiment that they basically confirm, basically they but about contradictions, if you look at what there was slight variation. What were there any significant contradictions?
No, there are significant contradictions, I guess, but we did not really. I mean, we have that in our. It's a good point. We have those results in GitHub basically. So now when we'll do the post evaluation, probably we will also present those contradictions.
Again, trying to if there were any series, again, we'll have to sort of bring in a number of factors. Oh, those are little, so majority of it seems similar, but the individuality from Gandhi to Swami and so on. Plus, then there's the language as well, because these are very different from 1930s to 1980s. So there could have been a number of factors that had a combination of these factors.
Exactly. The thing is, yes, the reason the contradictions will come, even if you give it to human experts, not the AI, you will see that some of the sentiments expressed by Mahatma Gandhi would be quite different from Eknath Easwaran. One of the reasons is that actually in these three scholars that we took, they have presented a very secular academic translation viewpoint of the Bhagavad Gita. It's not that they are promoting Hinduism as if that you should believe in Lord Krishna as the Supreme God. Whereas the Society for Krishna Consciousness, they have that bias in the translation because it's more of a religious version of the Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita. We kind of, in our Vedanta group, we are taking a very secular viewpoint of the Bhagavad Gita. We think it's not a religious text, but it's a philosophical text of India that is helping us shape our lives. And hence we are motivated from that point of view. But we do respect those who are taking it more as a religious text, and we see that nothing wrong. But I think taking your point into account, we should have used Swami Prabhupada's translation to compare more of a religious version versus a secular version translation for us. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Sue.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you.
I guess almost 100% of all of these guys are quite well versed in the latest language models and NLPs and so on. So you spoke to an audience, all the patients